He told me I was too old to stand beside him, too old to dream, too old to love. That night, he threw away 30 years of my life like yesterday's paper. But what he didn't know, what even I didn't know, was that my parents' 10-a-month secret would bury him. I met Daniel when I was 25. He was the kind of man who knew how to fill a room without saying much. Sharp suit, perfect hair, the charm of someone who always got what he wanted. Back then I thought I was lucky. Now, I realize I was just convenient. For 30 years, I built his life while mine faded in the background. He chased success. I built stability. He smiled for cameras. I balanced the accounts no one cared to see. He said he was ambitious. I called it vision. But now I see, it was greed. When I turned 55, I started noticing the distance. The late nights. The polite smiles that didn't reach his eyes. I told myself it was work stress. It wasn't. It was someone else. Her name was Lily, 29, fresh-faced. The kind of woman who wore ambition like perfume. He met her at one of his firm's charity galas. I remember because I picked the dress she wore. I didn't know I was helping my husband fall in love with someone else. It started small, flirty texts, long business trips. Then it became something I could no longer ignore. The night I found the message, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. She makes me feel alive again. That's what he wrote, as if I'd been the reason he died inside. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. He just sighed, poured himself a drink and said, "Clara, you've been wonderful, but I can't pretend anymore. We want different things. You want comfort. I want passion. You're too old for me now, too old." 2 words that cut deeper than betrayal. I stood there, staring at the man I'd given my life to, realizing he saw me as an expiration date. He didn't ask me to leave. He didn't have to. The silence that followed did all the work. The next morning I packed my things. He offered money, a pathetic gesture to ease his conscience. I refused. I wanted to keep what little dignity I had left. I moved into my parents' old house, the one they'd left behind when they passed. Dusty, quiet, forgotten, just like me. The first weeks were unbearable. I'd wake up and still make coffee for 2. Still glance at the door expecting him to come home. But ghosts don't knock twice. Days turned into weeks. One evening, as I was sorting through old boxes in the attic, I found a folder, yellowed, brittle, tied with faded string. Inside were stacks of papers, all neatly labeled. Investment receipts. Each paper showed the same deposit, $10 every month since 1975. My parents had always been frugal. My father a teacher, my mother a librarian. $10 was a lot for them back then. I thought it was just some old savings plan, until I looked closer. The name on the account made my heart stop. A small company I'd never heard of, Vireo Technologies. I Googled it. It didn't exist, at least not under that name. But the parent company did. It was one of the biggest renewable energy giants in the country, worth billions. My father had invested in it when it was just an idea. I called the bank. They transferred me to their legacy accounts department. The woman on the line sounded surprised. "Ma'am, you might want to sit down," she said. By the time she finished speaking, my knees gave out. The shares were still active, and with compound growth, splits, and reinvestments, they were worth over $32 million. 32 million for $10 a month. I sat there in the silence of that old house, trembling. I could almost hear my father's voice. "Clara, time rewards patience." And for the first time in years, I cried, not out of pain, but out of gratitude. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Daniel. Especially not Daniel. He was still parading around with his new prize, his young fiancée. They'd been featured in a magazine. A picture-perfect couple. The article called him a self-made man. I laughed so hard I almost choked. Self-made. No. He was Clara-made. I wanted revenge. But not the kind that screams. The kind that whispers, slow, precise, surgical. The kind that makes the world applaud your enemy before it buries him. So I started to plan. I hired a private investigator, not to follow him, to study him, his weaknesses, his secrets, his lies. He'd been running his firm like a god, investors, clients, high-profile names. But I knew him. He cut corners. hid debts, manipulated reports, and with his new fiancée sitting pretty as brand ambassador, he was pushing bigger risks to keep up appearances. I had access to his old records. The ones he forgot I helped build, and what I found was enough to destroy him. Fraudulent accounts, shell companies, fabricated invoices tied to offshore transfers. It was all there, buried beneath layers of fake signatures and doctored ledgers. He'd built an empire of glass, and I had the hammer, but I didn't swing it. Not yet. I needed the right moment, the perfect stage, and the audience? His investors. I used part of my newfound wealth to quietly buy shares in his company, through proxies, silent funds, anything that wouldn't trace back to me. Piece by piece, I became one of the largest hidden stakeholders. Every move he made, I knew before it hit the news, and every lie he told, I made sure had witnesses. Meanwhile, Daniel's ego grew. He posted about his new chapter, a luxury wedding planned in Florence. Lavish, exclusive, invite only. The press called it the wedding of the year. I called it the beginning of his end. A month before the ceremony, I received an invitation, handwritten, elegant, mocking. At first I thought it was a cruel joke, but then I realized it wasn't from him. It was from Lily. A note inside read, "I hope there are no hard feelings. You'll always be part of his story." She had no idea how right she was. I RSVP'd yes. And as I sealed the envelope, I smiled for the first time in years, because that day, Daniel's story would end, and mine would begin. The weeks leading up to the wedding, I worked quietly. Every night, I'd sit under the dim light of the attic lamp, surrounded by dusty files and new possibilities. I made calls, sent emails, arranged meetings. My father's 10-a-month legacy had given me more than money. It had given me freedom, power, the kind Daniel once used to control me. By the time his big day arrived, I had everything in motion. Every lie, every fraud, every stolen cent. I'd traced them all, and I'd made sure the right people had the evidence, the kind that couldn't be buried with money or charm. But I wanted him to see it unfold, to feel it, to watch the empire he built on deceit crumble, in front of everyone he tried to impress. The wedding was held at a historic villa outside Florence. Golden light, white roses, champagne fountains. He'd always loved appearances. And now, surrounded by them, he looked invincible. Guests whispered about his brilliance, his success, his youth. He looked right through me as if I were a stranger. But I saw the flicker of discomfort in his eyes, the ghost of guilt that never left. As the ceremony began, the air thickened. Music swelled. Cameras flashed. And just before he said, "I do," the first notification hit the investors' phones. News alert. Regulatory investigation launched into Falcon Equity Group. The room stirred, whispers, phones lighting up like stars. Daniel's smile faltered, then came the second notification. His accounts frozen. His name trending for all the wrong reasons. And me? I just stood there watching, calm, quiet, almost serene. Because this wasn't revenge born of rage. It was justice, written in patience. He turned toward me, confusion in his eyes, realization creeping in like a shadow. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. He knew. In that moment, surrounded by everything he thought defined him, Daniel's world cracked open. And I finally saw him for what he was. Small, fragile, forgettable. As security whispered into his ear, as his bride's face drained of color, as guests began to murmur and cameras turned away, I slipped quietly out the back gate. The Tuscan wind carried the faint sound of chaos behind me. I didn't look back. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the woman he left behind. I was the woman who walked away, with everything he tried to take from me. The night of the wedding stayed with me long after the lights went out. I remember the silence of the car as I drove away from that villa. The sound of my own breath louder than the world collapsing behind me. He was finished. And I was free. But freedom doesn't come quietly. It makes you face what's left behind. The years you gave away. The pieces of yourself you let someone else own. When I reached home, the air felt different. Still. safe. For the first time in decades, I slept without fear of being judged for existing. The next morning, the world woke to chaos. Headlines everywhere. Falcon Equity implodes in fraud scandal. CEO Daniel Harrow faces criminal probe. Every image showed the same thing: Daniel's face, pale, cornered, ruined. I watched the footage once, then turned the TV off. I didn't need to see him crumble to know he was gone. But the world isn't kind to men like him when they fall. The press devours them. The investors abandon them. The same people who once applauded his lies now called him a disgrace. He tried to contact me 3 days later. A blocked number. A voice message that began with my name, trembling, defeated. "Clara, please. I know what you did. You've made your point. Just stop." Stop? He wanted mercy after 30 years of taking mine? I deleted the message. No words could undo what he'd done to me. But revenge wasn't the end I wanted. It was only the bridge to something else. Something quieter. Something real. The investigation tore everything apart. The company collapsed within weeks. Lawsuits, arrests, headlines, a storm he couldn't outrun. He lost everything. The firm, the fortune, the house, even her. Lily, the woman he'd left me for. She lasted exactly as long as the spotlight did. When the money dried up, so did her love. She vanished, taking what little he had left. I almost pitied him. Almost. I later learned he moved into a small apartment on the edge of the city, sold his car, survived on scraps of what he once called success. People whispered that he spent nights sitting by the window, watching the skyline that used to belong to him, waiting for someone to call. No one ever did. I didn't visit. I didn't need closure. He was living it every day. Instead, I turned my focus inward. My parents' 10-a-month secret had changed my life, but I wanted it to mean something. Something more than money. I hired a small team. Quiet, loyal people who believed in what I was building. We created a foundation in my parents' name, the Vareo Trust. It funded renewable energy startups, small community programs, scholarships for women who'd been silenced by people like Daniel. Every investment I made wasn't just business. It was a message, a promise to the woman I used to be, that she'd never be small again. Months passed. I began to smile again. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped losing. There's a difference. Winning is about proving something. Healing is about not needing to anymore. One evening, as I was reviewing reports in my office, my assistant walked in. She looked nervous. "There's someone here to see you," she said. I didn't look up. I don't take unannounced meetings. He said it's important. He's Daniel Harrow. The name hit like a whisper from another life. For a moment, my hands froze on the paper. Then I nodded. "Send him in." He entered quietly. No tailored suit. No polished shoes. Just a man. Smaller, older, hollow. His eyes found me, and for the first time, I saw something I never had before. Humility. "Clara," he said, voice low, cracked. "You look different." "So do you," I replied. He sat down. No arrogance, no charm, just silence. "I lost everything," he said after a moment. "I know. I deserve it," he continued. "But I had to see you, to say, I'm sorry. Sorry." The word felt strange coming from him. Empty, but heavy, like it had taken him years to learn how to speak it. He looked around the office, the walls, the light, the quiet confidence in the air. "You built this," he said. "Without me." "Yes," I said softly. "Without you." He nodded slowly. "I used to think money made me untouchable. That power was something you could hold. But I was wrong. It's not power when it disappears the moment people stop fearing you. I watched him carefully. He wasn't here to beg. He was here to understand, and maybe that was punishment enough. I never wanted to destroy you, Daniel, I said. I just wanted you to see the truth. That the woman you threw away was the foundation of everything you built. His eyes glistened. Now I see it, he whispered. Too late, but I see it. He stood, hesitated, then reached into his pocket. A photograph. Our wedding day, decades ago. He placed it on my desk. I kept this. Thought maybe one day I'd remember who I was before I lost it all. I looked at the photo. 2 people smiling at a future that never came. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel anger. Just distance. Like watching a movie I'd already seen. He turned to leave. At the door, he paused. Clara, he said quietly. You won. I didn't answer. Because it wasn't about winning. It was about ending the story the right way. After he left, I sat alone for a long time. The city lights flickered beyond the window. I thought of my parents, their quiet faith in the power of small things. $10 a month, a lifetime of patience, and the strength to believe that even slow seeds can grow forests. In the weeks that followed, I heard Daniel had left the city. No one knew where. Some said he moved to a small coastal town. Others said he disappeared entirely. I never checked. Some ghosts are better left wandering. My life became simpler. Mornings with coffee on the balcony. Evenings spent reading under soft light. I started painting again. Something I hadn't done since my 20s. The colors came back to my hands like forgiveness. People began calling me a success story, a miracle. But the truth is, I wasn't a miracle. I was a consequence of betrayal, of patience, of quiet revenge crafted from the ashes of love. Sometimes, late at night, I replay the sound of his voice. You're too old for me. And I smile. Because age didn't destroy me. It revealed me. At 55, I was discarded. At 56, I was reborn. At 57, I became everything he said I couldn't be. And now, every time I sign a check that funds a young woman's dream, I think of Lily. I wonder if she ever looked at herself and realized she'd been a weapon in someone else's war. Maybe she did. Maybe not. Either way, I forgave her too. She was just another casualty of Daniel's illusion. One afternoon, I returned to the old house, my parents' home. The attic still smelled of dust and time. The folder was still there, neatly stacked, worn at the edges. I ran my fingers across the papers that started it all. $10, every month, for decades. They never lived to see what it became. But maybe they knew. Maybe they believed in something I couldn't see then. That value isn't in what you lose, but in what you carry forward. As I left the attic, I paused at the doorway. The light caught a photo frame on the wall, my parents smiling. I whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the wind was gentle. The trees swayed. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. Slow, deliberate, final. That was the moment I realized the story wasn't about revenge at all. It was about inheritance. Not of money, of strength, of faith, of time. The world had taken 30 years from me, but in return, it gave me something timeless, the power to rebuild without bitterness. And as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in gold and ash, I smiled quietly to myself. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar, it whispers, it waits. And when it finally arrives, it doesn't destroy, it restores. So yes, he said I was too old at 55, but he was wrong. because at 55, my story didn't end. It began.